Given what happened on Thursday, given the reporting in the New York Times and other outlets about the president's more frequent lapses, losing his train of thought, all of us saw what happened on Thursday, where he simply could not form coherent answers to many or some, if you will, of the questions, and here to lapse into nonsensical answers at the end. We beat Medicare, for instance. I'm going to ask something delicate, and you may not like it. The president may not like to hear it if he's watching, but I think the American people need to get a yes or no answer on this. Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
Obviously, Joe Biden is having a very bad week following the recent presidential debates. And as we can see here, people are now openly coming out and admitting that, yeah, we want to replace Joe Biden. As you can see on the screen right over here, the dam has broken. 25 congressional Democrats are preparing to call on Joe Biden to end presidential campaign following catastrophic debate. Okay, so you actually have people higher ups in the Democratic Party, these elected officials, saying it might be time to bow out Joe. Now, I hope it doesn't happen, because Joe Biden obviously is the worst and is so incredibly beatable. So here's my prediction. If he makes it through this weekend and into mid next week, I think he's going to stay. If he survives this news cycle, he's going to try to remain in power, okay? Because that's what Joe Biden does. So please let that be the best case scenario, where he actually stays in this race. However, of course, because he has these lacking numbers, right, he's probably going to end up dropping out. And I hope that does not happen. However, the polls are so bad that people are actually calling them atrocious. Check this out.
Harry, break down some of the new polling for us.
I mean, these numbers are atrocious for Joe Biden. That's the only way you can put it. I guess the good news when you match him up against Donald Trump is that he hasn't lost any ground from where he was back in April, but he was trailing in April by 6 points, and he's trailing by 6 points now. And, you know, I just think you have to take back a step and look at where we were 4 years ago at this point. Joe Biden was leading Donald Trump by 9 points. This is just a completely different race, one in which Donald Trump has led basically continuously, at least during 2024, and one in which his lead, if anything, is holding or even getting larger right now, high single digits. And I think there's, of course, the big question is, could another Democrat do better than Joe Biden against Donald Trump? And this new poll says, or at least suggests, that perhaps they could. Because take a look here. Yes, Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump by 6 percentage points. But look at this. Versus Kamala Harris, the vice president, it's just a 2-point race with no clear leader. So when I look at polls like this and you see the first call for Joe Biden to get out of the race from a member of Congress on the Democratic side, I don't think polling like this will stop those calls. I would only expect them to get louder if polling like this holds in other surveys.
Can we have any insight into why Harris is doing better than Biden?
Yeah, I think we do have an insight. You know, in this particular poll, partisans on each side, you know, Democrats support Joe Biden overwhelmingly. Republicans support Donald Trump overwhelmingly. This is a fight for the center of the electorate. It's a fight for independents. And what do we see among independents? I think that this gives it away, right? If you look and you compare Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and you compare Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, what do you see? You see that Donald Trump leads among independents by 10 points when faced off against Joe Biden. But among independents, those voters that, of course, Donald Trump won in 2016 and then lost in 2020 to Joe Biden, you could see that Kamala Harris is actually ahead by 3 points. She's doing better in the center of the electorate. Now, of course, Harris is not as well known as Joe Biden. She's not as well known as Donald Trump either. But if you look at this point right at this time, what you see is that 22% of voters have no opinion of Kamala Harris. Either they have no opinion or they've never heard of her. Compare that to 8% for Joe Biden, 7% for Donald Trump. So at this point, in my mind, she's a generic Democrat. As she gets better known, those numbers against Donald Trump, given that Donald Trump is not popular at this point, those numbers can close even more. At this point, looking at this data, I am not really quite sure that Democrats can do any worse than they are doing with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. They may, in fact, do better.
So the big solution there for the Democrats is possibly to get Kamala Harris to replace Joe Biden. But notice she still loses to Trump, and 22% of independents basically don't know anything about her, right? And once she becomes a frontrunner, if that were to happen, and I hope it doesn't, then of course all the videos of her horrible speeches, right, her halted laughter, all of that would become forefront, and everyone would probably switch real quick to having an opinion about how crappy she actually is. Now, of course, the rank and file Democrats are not the only people to recognize that Joe Biden could possibly bring down the ticket coming in November. Even Joe Biden himself has reportedly been considering leaving the race. So even though there's this united front with his family and Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, etc., people trying to rally around him behind closed doors, allegedly, he's saying, yeah, maybe it's time I go out to pasture. Of course, is he actually thinking that? Or is someone just whispering it into his ear because the man is not capable of coherent thought? And of course, all of this is predicated around the horrible numbers that Biden is getting and no one can deny anymore.
While the presumptive nominees are functionally tied in our national poll, it shows a shift towards former President Trump. Now, our last poll had President Biden leading very slightly. The president was also in battleground states in the last poll. Now he is behind by 3 points, though that is still within the margin of error. This comes as the White House offers multiple explanations for the president's debate performance.
We'll use to push back on the president. Take a look overall at the state of the race in our brand new poll. 49% Donald Trump, 43% Joe Biden. This is a 6-point lead, Dana, and this is unchanged since our last poll in April. In fact, it's been a remarkably consistent race with Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump just outside the margin of error for quite some time. If you look back in our trend here, you see it was identical in April, 49-43. You see nothing has really changed since last August. By last fall, this race is kind of locked into place.
That's remarkable to look at that, even just from April to now. Exactly the same.
Identical. And the Biden campaign will say to folks, see, the debate didn't change the state of the race. Of course, when you're 6 points down, you kind of needed the debate to change the state of the race.
Yes, national polling, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, this is very important because it would be like a mandate for Donald Trump. If he wins not only the Electoral College, but also the popular vote, that would not give any excuses to the Democrats to say, see, he's illegitimate. We don't want him as president. He's a Russian plant, all right? They would not have that leg to stand on. So it's so important that Trump wins that popular vote as well. And he can do it against, of course, Joe Biden. But also the big talk of the town is replacing Joe Biden with Big Mike.
Michelle Obama, for years, has been urged to get into politics for the sake of her family, the sake of, the life she prefers to run. She would rather be a very committed, a very effective activist, but one who is not actually on the political front lines. And there's no sign that that view has been changed. Clearly, Michelle Obama rates highly in terms of approval amongst Americans. I think she would be a very capable candidate, even at this late stage. But to be honest with you, going to Michelle Obama.
So the name now being bandied about to replace Biden is, of course, Michelle Obama, someone who doesn't have a huge public persona out there as far as being political. She was the first lady. People remember her fondly, etc. She had some initiatives people look back on and say, oh, good job for ruining school lunches. But either way, she's largely untouched. However, once you get in that political arena, everything tends to melt away when truth and old video clips tend to come out. But nevertheless, according to recent polling, only Michelle Obama will beat President Donald Trump in a head-to-head match. And if we look at these numbers down here, Michelle Obama 50%, Donald Trump 39%. And that's a pretty big swing. Of course, these polls, as I said, do not take into account the fact that she basically has not been touched politically. So do you trust these numbers? I wouldn't from this point in time, but the Democrats, of course, are looking for anything greener on the other side of that fence. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.